Well, the Democrats are furious and angry all because of their last stand. The one thing that they thought that they could rely on was the judicial coup. And today, SCOTUS finally put an end to all that nonsense, bringing the United States back to the way it should be, back to the executive branch where the authority of the federal government should be in there, not in some unelected bureaucrat judges. Well, welcome back, folks. I am your host, CASHLOREN. Hope you had a very great week, as we will make liberals cry tears that are saltier than McDonald's fries. We start out today's episode with the rulings from the SCOTUS, and to talk about is how big of a deal this is for the American voters. As close to 80 million of you voted for Donald Trump, but how many of you voted for these unelected bureaucrats? 0. Yet they thought that Donald Trump had to ask them on every single issue whether he had the authority to do so or not. Basically, share power, mother may I, with 600 unelected bureaucrat judges. This fell directly on the Democrats' face today, and a whole lot more as SCOTUS finally heard the birthright citizen case today. We're going to start going through all this, including where this all began. Is after this, very early this morning, we had a huge win where they ruled on the case, and they would on this part. This is one of the big things on this is the birthright citizenship that Donald Trump has been pushing. This is never meant to be where illegal immigrants or anybody for that matter just comes in this country, births a baby, and then that baby is now a citizen of the United States. That was never once the intention of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was all about children of slaves, who, by the way, our side, the conservative side, fought the Democrats to free. Now that now they're speaking of the very same Democrats that they've tried to import tens of millions of people into this country to create a brand new voting bloc for the Democrats. And never ever doubt that for a single second. That is the whole reason why that they have tried to abuse the 14th Amendment. It's because they either make a new voting bloc now, either get them here, and as the Democrats say, a pathway to citizenship, or what's the strangest one I've heard? What do they call them? They call them an undocumented citizen. And we talk about some 2 + 2 = 5 woke nonsense garbage. Or they want to do what they're trying to do here in the 14th Amendment that was struck down today, is that, or that the children will become citizens here just because an illegal popped them out here. Therefore, the child is now a citizen, and either they have a new voting bloc now, or they have a new voting bloc here in 20 years. That is all now coming to an end. As the final decision, of course, won't be until October, but one of the huge parts about this is now these judges, they don't have these they can't do these just national injunctions on everything that they want to do. Part of this, these national injunctions, is that what the Democrats would do is they would judge shop, and they would go and they would try to place lawsuits where they had a very friendly judge pool to pull from. And then magically, over and over and over again, the most radical, insane, left wokest judge would get the case again and again and again. And then they decide that they're judges, but really they're activists for the Democrats, that they can just write law from the bench or make things up as they go. That's never how the separation of powers was ever supposed to work here in this country. When we talk about 3 equal branches of government, that means each one has exclusive authority in their own lane. That does not mean that the judges are up here and mother may I, yes, no, to the president or to Congress. That is never how our Constitution was meant to work. The Democrats knew it, the activist judges knew it, and yet they still tried anyways. Just like Elizabeth Warren said, after Joe Biden lost the presidency, and then they tried to put Kamala Harris in his place, and then Kamala Harris eventually lost to Donald Trump in November. Right before they were running out of power, Elizabeth Warren says, we're going to try to put as many activist judges into place. And she didn't use the word activist, but she knows exactly what they were doing, is they were trying to rule from the bench. There also another huge one today was the parents are now allowed to opt their kids out of all these LGBTQ propagandas. such as these books and these training programs. Okay, these books that they're trying to show to minors are so pornographic that I can't show them to you on this air because I'd either have to beep out so much of it or that this show wouldn't be able to air and get flagged. And these are the same books that they want to show children, yet when other great patriots would go to school boards and start reading what are in these books, the own teachers and the own administration say, you can't read that here. Well, you can't read that here with adults in a school class, in a school assembly, or up in a school meeting. Then why can't those books, why are they being given to kids? I think we all know the answer to that. There's also a huge part of this where SCOTUS ruled in favor of states' rights to require age verification for adults, for websites that show adult content. Again, this is all about protecting minors to stop these woke activists from trying to groom them and abuse them. It wasn't that too long ago where if somebody tried to show a minor an adult film, that person would and should go to jail. Why all of a sudden has the Democrats decided that this is somehow okay for minors all the way down to kindergarten or below? I'm not making any of that up. I wish I could be more graphic with what is happening in our country with these Democrats. I really wish that I could show you these pictures of these books that they want to show or read them to you. I mean, this stuff is just as graphic as you're imagining if you haven't seen it for yourself. And then Amy Coney Barrett, who has been a real hit and miss for the conservatives, has accused Ketanji Brown Jackson of being too stupid to be on the Supreme Court. And of course, she didn't use the word stupid, but the language she used is absolutely hilarious. And then MSNBC has a complete meltdown over this. As Donald Trump, he also listed a whole bunch of policies that have continued to gain better for us, the American people, because now these activist judges are going out of the way. Some of this being, for example, is that he can now, this ending of the birthright citizenship that we've been covering, also on this, that there's now they can stop the funding of all these sanctuary cities, which I believe that was a junction in California, if I remember right. It was they did it, but it was the same thing they do. They file a lawsuit in a very friendly venue. That activist judge and writes a national injunction. And on this case, if I remember right, they're trying to play two sides of the coin. They're trying to say, well, this isn't a national injunction because this only affects these cities. But the cities were all the sanctuary cities of the Democrats. I think there were 16 of them. It's virtually the exact same thing as a national injunction. So nice try to play on that one. And then they suspended the refugee resettlement. The numbers that are going to be deported in the next few months are going to blow your mind. And then how they're doing it too is this is something that is causing a modern problem with a modern solution. And then also they're stopping taxpayer funding from these transgender surgeries. And there's two big sides of this. One, as we go and protect children, okay, no child should be allowed to have what they're calling like a transgender surgery, or they're change the body parts, or they try to make them from one sex over to the next sex. And we don't let kids smoke. We don't let them drink. We don't let them vote. We don't let them get tattoos. Yet these Democrat activists and these doctors who should lose their medical license and go to prison, all of a sudden think that they get to decide now that these children can remove healthy body parts and do permanent irreparable damage to these kids. And of course, there's no cover of what happens if they become adults and they want to change their mind, because the reality is then it's way too late. They've already been groomed. Their lives have already been ruined. Now, as an adult, the adult wants to do whatever they want to do to their body. I say as long as taxpayers don't pay for it, I really don't care. If they want to remove healthy body parts, fine. Any more than I care about them getting a tattoo or smoking and drinking. As destructive as I think it is, at the point that you're an adult, fine, so do it. But when you're talking about minors who can't consent, this is a very different story. And this is a huge fight for us to fight and win, just like with women's rights, as they're trying to have these biological males go into women's sports and women's spaces. This is also about protecting children too. This is a huge issue that I never thought that we'd be arguing, but yet here we are. And now we have MSNBC, Nicole Wallace, who is very, very upset, all because SCOTUS is ruling against these activist judges and then making Ketanji Brown Jackson look like the DEA clown that she is.
An existential threat to the rule of law. Rarely has the liberal wing of the United States Supreme Court sounded as alarmed about the direction of the country and the court as it does right now. In a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court curbed the ability of lower court judges to issue nationwide injunctions. Now, those are basically rulings that stop things, illegal things, rulings that block policies from going into place nationwide. And she writes this, quote, when a court concludes that the executive branch has acted unlawfully, the answer is not for the court to exceed its power too.
I can't tell you, folks, just how right that is. And you see how upset she's getting, which is absolutely hilarious, because the Democrats, that was their last line of defense. The Democrats, they don't look at themselves as servants over you. They don't see it as the way that our constitutional republic was written, as you elect your leaders and your leaders carry out your will. The Democrats think that's absolutely nonsense, and that's below them because they see you, the American people, as below them, as they have convinced themselves that they are morally right in all things. And they progress liberalism through activism on the streets and in these judges. And they never thought that ever that Donald Trump would be able to come back into office. But once he was, they saw themselves as the last line of defense to defend democracy. But what we're not talking about is actual democracy. What we're talking about is the Democrats' bureaucracy. Their want to rule over you because they see themselves as the liberal elites and they see themselves as the betters, high above you in their high ivory towers. They're smarter than you. They're better than you. And you should just give up your rights and give up your votes because they are morally just. I mean, this is about social justice. This is about DEI. This is about equity and inclusion. Yet none of that is what our country is about. And so when Donald Trump came back, when 77 million of you voted for Donald Trump, they saw that as that being a threat to their rule over you, and that you never should have voted for Donald Trump. They still think to this day, as we played from the other day, like Bernie Sanders saying that he thought the reason Kamala Harris lost was because she wasn't communist enough. And now they see themselves, because they see themselves as morally right. And it doesn't matter if it's true. That's how they see themselves. And the Democrats, they're on the wrong side of every single issue. I mean, name one side that they're on the right side of. They can't make a single one. And so now we move on to where Donald Trump is coming to power. So because they see themselves as right, because they see themselves as your betters, they now think that it's their job to obstruct Donald Trump. But really not to obstruct Donald Trump, really to obstruct you because you voted the wrong way. So now they're going to try to slow down as much as they can and stop as much as they can, and then hope that they gain power back in at least 2026, where they can take the House back, and that's on very thin ice right now. And then if not that, then back in 2028 and take back, hopefully, they're hoping, of course, the presidency and Congress. And they can go right back to the uniparty, ignoring the American voters and just doing whatever they want again. So you have Nicole Wallace, Democrat activist, pretending to be an independent journalist, just like the rest of them, as she's decided that it's so bad because they see life as like Ketanji Brown Jackson, is she's this black woman who made it all the way up to SCOTUS. Well, not because of her abilities, as we're going to make fun of her here in a moment, but because of her skin color. Because the Democrats are racist. So Ketanji Brown Jackson, who writes in her piece and is going to get thoroughly and deservingly mocked, she goes, the court's decision to permit executives to violate the Constitution with respect to anyone who is not sued is an essential threat to the rule of law. No, it's not. The president has executive authority that is exclusive to him. The judges, they don't get to write law from the bench. And a great example way to show this is the Donald Trump is the chief of the military, right? He is the boss. If he goes and he orders troops to move, can some judge then make him not do it or change his mind? Write an injunction on that? Of course not. They don't have any authority over foreign policy or over the military. Once they see, but the Democrats, they won't talk about that because the minute they do, everything that they've argued about is gone. It's just like with everything to do with foreign policy or running the federal government. The Congress is here, president is here, and the judicial branch is here. They're all co-equal with their own power. It's not what the Democrats trying to pretend all of a sudden that the judges are way up here and they have the ultimate authority over the president and over Congress. And Amy Coney Barrett, she's going to get into that more in a second, but I'm going to read this second quote and then we're going to get into Coney Barrett. So then her second one, it's important to recognize that executive bid to vanquish so-called universal injunctions is, bottom, a request of the court's permission to engage in unlawful behavior. Again, no, it's not, because it's not the Trump who is in unlawful behavior. And even if he was, which he's not in this case, the judges don't always get to just decide from the bench. Even if they know and everyone else knows that Donald Trump or any other president, for example, was to do something that they considered was illegal. They don't have the authority in most cases to step in on that. And this is where Amy Coney Barrett is going to absolutely destroy her on all of these cases. She's going to write, and I just think this is great, is the writings here. So bear with me a second. It says, we will not dwell on the Justice Jackson's argument, which is riddled with more of the, she's like, I'm sorry, I'm having such a hard time reading this. Is I want to do this quote for quote. So here, let me bring this up real quick so I can read this better. All right, so we will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than America's 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. Again, facts. For her to blatantly go after Ketanji Brown Jackson like that, I got a feeling more and more that the Supreme Court is absolutely sick of her. And then it goes, Justice Jackson skips over that part because analyzing the government statutes involves a boring and her legalities, which is actually in her job description. And we're way past the break. When we come back, we're going to break down each one of these orders and a lot more that happened today. You're not going to miss it. We got a whole bunch to pack in to this hour. And I am your host, CASHLOREN. We'll do a full job of it when we come back from this greedy profit break. Well, the Democrats have chosen to be on the wrong side of every single issue that we have here in the United States. And this has led to Donald Trump becoming more and more popular, not less. As the Democrats were on their very last leg trying to obstruct him with these activist judges. And now the SCOTUS has ruled this down, and we hope to see a lot more here in the very soon in the future. It's greetings, folks. It is great to be back with you and to have another huge win on a Friday to lead us into this weekend as we continue to defeat the left with logic and common sense. Is our mission now to defeat the woke mind virus. The Democrats, as they gone on to their activist judges, now SCOTUS ruled 6-3 in many, many huge cases against these activist judges. And one of the things that the Democrats would do is they would go and they would judge shop. And judge shopping is what they do is they'd sue in certain locations that they thought they could get a friendly judge. And magically, the most leftist, activist, commie judge would get the most important cases over and over and over again. And Pam Bondi really called this out today because this was never the way that our nation was supposed to work. As Pam Bondi went off on these activist judges today, calls it judge shopping, which is exactly what it is. And then she said this, 35 of the 40 national injunctions filed against the president came from Maryland, D.C., Massachusetts, California, and Washington. So that's crazy. Only 5 of districts in all the United States. And But if you're paying attention, you know this is not new. This is exactly what they do over and over and over again. And one of the things that I think is very wise, I think at this time of Donald Trump's administration, is he's getting all these battles going right now and getting this stuff immediately. As we talked about, when Donald Trump first came in office, I think he signed close to 300 executive orders. It was to trigger all these lawsuits. So they can get them up to SCOTUS as soon as possible. And as soon as they get them up to SCOTUS, they can then get some rulings so the administration's not stuck at their heels at the end of the administration, like it was in his first administration, where they're going through basically piece by piece by piece. And then we got to the end of 2020, there was litigation in place, and then there was all these rulings, and then Donald Trump left office, Biden came in, and then many of these cases, Biden and his DOJ just dropped. Now Donald Trump is doing it in a very different way, which I can't praise him enough for, because what these activist judges are doing, this is blatant as tyranny. Donald Trump is not the threat to creating a constitutional crisis. The Democrats' activist judges are creating the constitutional crisis. It's not Donald Trump who is a threat to our democracy. No, it's the Democrats who are trying to obstruct your will with their judges that are the real threat to our democracy, or really to their bureaucracy, because they think of themselves as they have the right to rule over you. And so because of that, they then see you as a threat to their rule. And because they convince themselves they're right, they think that anything they can do then is just. It doesn't matter how legal, right? As long as the means they get to the right end, then so be it. That is the way that it should be done. Right? That is 100% the way that the Democrats think. They see you as the threat. Never, ever doubt that for a single second. When they talk about the rule of law, when they talk about constitutional crisis, when they talk about threats to our democracy, what they really mean is your vote. If you're not voting for them. And they are on their very last leg now. I mean, it used to be that they would at least pretend to be Americans. See, the Democrats, there's nothing have been changed. People think that there's somehow like this flop or this flip where the Democrats are moving more communist. None of that is actually true. Do not doubt me on a single second of this. What is different is they're just being more open and blatantly obvious about it. See, when they took back the White House in 2020, and then they got away with the BLM riots and everything else that happened in 2020, they thought that they would never lose power again. So they opened the floodgates. They allowed tens of millions of illegal immigrants here into our country, and then they thought that they would have a permanent rule. And of course, there would still be a Republican Party, because even in the Soviet Union, they had an opposition party, but that party had no real power. They were what we saw from 2022 to 2024 and well before that, where they would go, where you would have, let's say, a Republican speaker, Mike Johnson, right? And he would write a bill and the Democrats would shut it down. And then Mike Johnson, what did he do? Well, we tried, we did our best, and then that would go away. And then he'd give the Democrats everything they want. That's a fake opposition. Just like with Mitch McConnell and all his cronies, they would go and they would give the Democrats everything they want. They'd get them to the 60-vote threshold. And now we're facing with the Senate is they're trying to remove all of Donald Trump's, the big parts, the big, beautiful bill to basically make it a Democrat spending bill. And Thune is refusing to do anything about it when he very much should. Now, this also rules that the parents can opt out children to the public school for LGBTQ curriculums. Again, 100%. This is what we want. The more that we can give parents power, the more authority that we can put in your own life, that's the closest we can get to what our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence says. When we were told the right to pursue happiness, that doesn't mean the government ruling over every aspect of your life. That means that there has to be a government, yes, but it should be as minimalistic as possible, and that the more decisions that you can have, the better. So you don't just vote with your vote checking a box. You also vote by which state you live in. And the more federal government then we can do, and the more the states change from state to state to state that will determine that, right? The more that can be in your county, then you can move from in the state to in your county. What we're talking about here are the schools, and some school wants to teach us woke, BLM, activist garbage, then you can pull your kids out and just put them in a different school. I know that Donald Trump is trying to get rid of the Department of Education. And while he can't get rid of it all the way, he can get rid of a very significant part of it with executive order. And hopefully we can, like he says, bring it back to the states and then do that even further and get rid of public schools altogether and replace them with school choice so the parents have the more say in their children's life as much as possible. That will, I think, will go further in the long run for our country than anything else we can do. Another huge ruling that's coming out of this now is that the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of states that their right to do age verification for adult content on websites is probably the most PG rated way I can say it. Again, this is where the more state rights and then vote with who you agree with by where you live. This can't be better for our country. The grooming needs to end where your kids are stuck in these failing schools and they hire these woke activist teachers that are teaching all this stuff these kids that their parents don't want, and then there's nothing really the parents can do. Their option is either quit their job and homeschool or keep sending them to the school the federal government forced them to go to, or their local schools by how they district. That has to come to an end. Good schooling, it really shouldn't be just for the rich. The Democrats say that, but then they lock you in these failing schools ran by the federal government. Our way, the school choice, that is the solution. As we go in and we take parents and just give them the tax dollars, some will call it a voucher, however you want to call it, and then you just choose where your kid goes to school. And the schools that suck, the teachers that suck, watch them go bankrupt. And the schools that go and then give the parents what they want, the reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and then keep biological males out of women's sports, and the ones that don't teach all this woke liberal garbage, if you don't want your kids to learn that stuff, you can send them to those schools. See, this is how we win this fight. Also on these injunctions really quick is that, so Obama had 12, Biden had 14, and Trump has already had 79 national injunctions. The coup worked for the first 6 months of Donald Trump's administration, but now it's finally over. And now that's over, Donald Trump's administration can do what they're supposed to do. And part of this, too, to be clear, is it's just the national injunctions that are gone. So individual cases can still be brought to individual courts, and then those judges in those areas can rule on those and go back through on above, and then they can, go up the chain there. But no more a judge in California deciding for the entire country on foreign national policy, an authority that they were never ever supposed to have. And now we're gonna go into Gavin Newsom, who desperately wants to be president of the United States of America, but he is failing over and over again. He lost with the National Guard, and now he's trying to sue Fox. And this is about as laughable as you'd imagine. But I just saw the clock. We're gonna take a break a few minutes early before we get in this story, so we don't have to interrupt in the middle of the story. When we come back, we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more, including Florida's plan to how they're going to lock up illegal immigrants and then keep them behind the walls. You're going to love this one. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back after this greedy profit break. This is the Cash Loren Show. Well, Gavin Newsom is thinking that he is going to be the next president of the United States. You remember back when Biden, when they realized that he was not going to make it to a second term, all of a sudden Gavin Newsom was showing up at the White House when Joe Biden wasn't there, but presumably to pitch his pick to be the next president of the United States, as he thought he would go from San Francisco to California and then go all the way to the Washington, D.C. and to the White House. But what's kind of funny and ironic about all this is that when Newsom, he is as woke and liberal as they can get. And he is now in California where they have a supermajority there. But trying to put Gavin Newsom on the main stage in the federal at the national is the same problem that the Democrats have for all their politicians, the ones that are left. is that they've kicked everyone out that's moderate, and now all that's left is these woke activist leftists. I mean, who are they going to run? Gavin Newsom, as he hopes, Jasmine Crockett, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie Sanders, bro, running around there, fight the oligarchy in their private jets, doing all that, the jet fuel. I mean, so much for climate change, right? If you own how many houses? I think Bernie owns 3 or 5 houses, flying around in private jets, living in mansions. And to show you just how hypocrisy that the Democrats are. And there's the same problem with Gavin Newsom, as he is desperate to get on the national stage, but he has really no shot. And I really hope that the Democrats try it, because they have nobody right now. And I think in 2028, this is going to be a huge problem for them, as they're doubling down on all the wrong lessons. You have Zohan now and running in New York City, and he thinks, because he won the primary there against Cuomo, that somehow that means the nation wants a communist to be in charge of the country. And hopefully that he never, ever makes it to the mayor's house, because New York will never recover. I mean, how did New York already forget 9/11? And now they're about to elect a Muslim communist who funds Hamas into the New York mayor's house, and then pushing all these woke radical agendas. We're going to talk a lot more about that this week and more later, but sticking with Gavin Newsom, as he goes on, he's now trying to file a lawsuit to get more big bangers and try to get his name out there against Fox News, claiming that Fox News lied to him. And this is the same BS that he tried to pull, and this is related to when Donald Trump took the National Guard from him. And one of the very funny moments I saw in politics was when Newsom, he got an injunction from a very low-level judge that some of the Democrats love, and then he went on TV and he bragged about how he was fighting Donald Trump to get the National Guard back. Because him, like the rest of these Democrats, you remember all the way back to summer of 2020 till now, is he was going to let LA burn. But Donald Trump stood in and said, we're not going to allow this to happen. And when Gavin Newsom refused to release the National Guard, then Donald Trump, under his legal authority, took over. Gavin sued him, right? Won it at a low level, bragged about it. And less than an hour later, Gavin Newsom lost in the appeals court and eventually lost higher up. Because, as we said, Donald Trump has the authority to do that. The Democrats knew it. Gavin Newsom knew it. All the rest knew it. But they do the same thing that Democrats always do. They just try to do whatever they want and then lie about it and try to move so fast that you can't react. Well, this is another thing that Gavin Newsom is doing here, as after Donald Trump has been fighting the fake news networks, the Gavin Newsom is trying to be opposite side of the coin. Whereas the CNN and New York Times, as Donald Trump has looked like he's going to sue them, he's also suing CBS and 60 Minutes because they were blatantly lying and misleading to the American voters. And while they're offering Trump settlements, he's not taking it. And who knows how big these settlements are going to be, but I hope huge, because the fake news networks, they deserve to lose every single penny. Where now you have Gavin Newsom, and he's trying to be the opposite of Trump. Everything that Trump does, Gavin Newsom just tries to be the opposite, as he thinks he's going to run in 2028. So Donald Trump sues in fake news. Now Gavin Newsom's making up a lawsuit in $800 million. And then he's running all the same hoaxes that he used to do before. He files a suit, and then he's running around on TV and newspapers and X's, bragging like he's already won. And at the very heart, as far as I can tell on this thing, is that he's either lying then or he's lying now. Because initially what Gavin Newsom said is that when Donald Trump took over the National Guard, is he said that Donald Trump never called him and never even left him a voicemail, which was blatantly false. And Donald Trump turned over the records. And this is what's going to be interesting about this too, is because everything that Donald Trump does, I mean, it's in the records. It's not like it's a conversation that nobody hears and knows about. And it's your word versus his word. So how does Gavin Newsom think he's going to win this? He's just going to take another huge L. Unless what he hopes that happens with Fox and Dominion is that Fox just gives up and settles. And while that was completely different, and Fox never should have done it, That's a story for a different time. So the thing is, he's claiming he lied about the phone call with Donald Trump, and now he's trying to lie about when the phone call actually happened. So he's moving the goalposts. Now he's saying, yeah, there was a phone call, but it didn't happen when they said it did. So we're going to play a shortened clip. So this is the Fox News segment that Gavin Newsom is claiming that the Fox News defamed him on this segment here.
Democrat governors let violence fester until finally Trump restored order. Trump's not waiting around this time. He says if it wasn't for him, L.A. would be up in smoke.
Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last time we gave him a little additional help, you would have, Los Angeles would be burning right now.
Newsom responded, and he said there wasn't a phone call. He said Trump never called him. Not even a voicemail, he said. But John Roberts got Trump's call logs, and it shows Trump called him late Friday night, and they talked for 16 minutes.
So that's the part that Gavin Newsom was trying to lie about. And where does he think he's going to win on this? Is the real funny, just ironic and thing about the Democrats is that they think that they can lie their way through life. Because the heart of the Democrats for probably forever is that they win when they do a better job of lying than our side does a better job of telling the truth. That's the two different sides of the same coin. And that's the side that Gavin Newsom has gotten so used to there in California. But the problem is for him when he tries to go on the national stage is that he doesn't have a supermajority. And he's coming up at a time when the Democrats have been more unpopular than I've ever seen them be in my lifetime. I mean, they have a built-in 30% base of the country because we roughly are a third. There's roughly a third Democrat, roughly a third Republican, and there's roughly a third that are in the middle. Probably a vast majority of you that are listening to this show right now, you're probably somewhere in the middle. I'm not far off on that. You're probably on more like social issues. You're probably more middle left. But on government and on laws, you're probably more middle right. And then varying somewhere in there. So that's the most of the country. The most of the country is right in here. But the Democrats, they have gone so far left and so far woke that they're way over here now. And because they don't talk to anybody but their own liberal elite friends, they don't realize that there's many of you out there. With a built-in base at 30+%, all of a sudden they can't get to a 20% approval rating. By their own fake polls, last I saw, had them at 17%. So where do they go from here but only low unless they learn a lesson and they start to change on who they are. But I don't see it happening as they continue to double down and fake news continues to think that they can just lie for Democrats over and over and over again and get away with it as their ratings tank. Continue to learn nothing, I say. Gavin Newsom, just keep being on the wrong side with the rest of the Democrats on every single issue. Please do it. Please think that you can put like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Jasmine Crockett or Pete Buttigieg on the national stage and think that you can win a major election. Please do it. They learned nothing from Kamala Harris, who spent $2 billion and lost all 7 swing states and lost the popular vote. The Democrats lost Congress, both the Senate and the House, and they still think now that they can run all the same policies, but even double down on going further and further left. Learn nothing. The next battle, speaking of learning nothing, is over in New York City, where now they're running a straight up communist to try to take over New York City, a Muslim communist. And he very well could win. But now he's going with all the same policies and openly being very open and upfront with you about how far left he really is. Because in his mind, like the rest of the Democrats, they need to go further left. They need to go more communist. Or he's running as a socialist Democrat. But there's no difference between socialism and communism. See, all the isms They're all communism. They're just repackaged. And now, because he thinks that he's morally right and he's morally just, he's openly, blatantly bragging about doing things that are very illegal. As one of the things that he wants to do is he wants to tax white people and then redistribute that to people of color. Yeah, we have civil rights laws in this country. And now Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights, Hareen Dillon, is threatening to investigate him, and that may sue or lead to criminal charges. And hopefully they find out, because everything that the Democrats on the wrong side of, including trying to separate people by race, is they use as social justice or DEI or equity. But really what it all is it is institutional racism. And it never should have infected our country because it is illegal. And it really is against everything that we believe in as American citizens. As we believe in America in a merit-based system. So that's really the heart and core of capitalism in our constitutional republic. That you work hard and you earn based on your work, the fruits of your labors. The more you serve society, the more you will have. But you can go from neighborhood to neighborhood and you can tell who is served more by what they do and don't have. The lie that the left tries to push that, capitalism is only for the greedy rich is so easy to disprove, because capitalism has grown the greatest country this world's ever known. In fact, capitalism created more wealth for everybody than any other country in the world. The poorest of America is in the top percentage points of the rest of the world. See, this is how good we have it. But when you have it this good, a lot of people don't realize it. And so they're taught to think that how America's bad and America's evil and how America needs to be brought down to its knees. So they feel this guilt that no one should ever feel. You should be proud. Okay, when you go to work and you take home your paycheck, that should inspire you. That should bring pride. And that should encourage you to work hard, to serve more, and to earn more, and to teach your children those exact same lessons. That there's value in individuality. Now, the Democrats, they don't see it that way at all, because the more freedom and money that you have, then you don't need them, the Democrats. See, the Democrats, they are the villains. And villains, they need you to be poor and weak, because in order for villains to have power, they need victims. It is that simple. So when the Democrats, that's why they make all their promises and they lie to you, but everywhere they go, society collapses. This is why they release criminals over and over and over again, why they refuse to prosecute, why these insane people that are trying to run for New York, like Zohan, is now all of a sudden bragging about making like prostitution legal, or releasing criminals, or how violence is just an obstruct. And this is completely crazy. Looney Tunes, 2 + 2 = 5. But for the Democrats, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Now, here is Zohan to show you just how insane this guy is. Here's his newest clip bragging on fake news networks.
To be working alongside the Trump administration to build the single largest deportation force in American history. I'm going to actually represent each and every New Yorker, and that includes immigrant New Yorkers, and that means standing up for the laws of this city, like our sanctuary city policies, which have kept New Yorkers safe for decades. IPD would actually serve New Yorkers and not assist ICE in their operations.
Out of all his other crazy ideas that he thinks is going to run for this country, now he thinks that New York is going to keep their sanctuary cities, and then that their police departments are not going to assist ICE to deport illegal immigrants. See, this is very popular with you. Even fake news networks had to admit it when they ran their own fake polls, and CNN was absolutely shocked. They couldn't believe it. They were blown away that on their own fake polls, when they try to ask a loaded question, as the fake news often does, and they try to skew it in their favor by asking if Americans were okay with 100% of illegal immigration, trying to apply that most illegal immigrants, are just good people who want the American dream. But to their own shock, 57% of you said every single illegal immigrant should be deported from this country. Every last one. It will stick with me, the horrified look on the fake news networks when they realize that, how unpopular they are, but they still learn no lessons. So now they're standing up and they're throwing American citizens last. You, the voters, you, the taxpayers, they couldn't care less about any of you. The Democrats, they want to push forward with all their very unpopular policies, and they want to defend people who are here illegally against law enforcement. It's so Looney Tunes and backwards that they're the ones breaking their laws. They're the ones refusing to enforce the laws that are on our books. But then they're also trying to pretend that somehow, because they're refusing to enforce the laws, that they're somehow on the right side of law enforcement. Make it make sense. Please do. See, this is why they're on the wrong side of every single 2080 issue. And this is caused a lot more when he's talking about their Judge Dredd Homan has been the patriot that we need, and him and the Department of Homeland Security, their ICE, is working on deporting every single illegal immigrant from this country. Just like you voted for, and securing our border. And that's part of this big, beautiful bill that Trump wants to get all this money that they need to do all the enforcement that we voted for. But Zohan thinks as mayor, he is also the president of the United States. And so he's decided that he's going to stand by these criminal, illegal aliens and against the American public. Will New York elect him? I don't know. I really hope not. I hope that they've learned their lessons. As we are able to now show just how insane this guy is, just like that clip we showed there. Defending criminals, refusing to enforce our laws. He wants to tax based on race, and then all the free stuff he's promising. But the free stuff that communists promise, the reason they have to promise it is because no one would go for communism on its own merit. But so they offer free stuff, but the free stuff is a poison fruit. And a real quick side on, I just saw on the numbers, got told, we just crossed 10,000 live viewers. And I want to thank every single one of you for helping to support this show as it started from zero. And we fight every day to save our country from the communist left. If you're enjoying it, please take a moment, hit the repost and follow, and make sure you turn on notifications so we can continue to defeat the woke mind virus every day with logic and common sense. Here's how we're going to defeat the Zohan, hopefully for mayor, as now it's up to him and us defending Mayor Adams from all people. As Kathy Hochul, she has decided, last I saw at least, that she is not ready to back Zohan yet. And this is the same problem that Bernie Sanders ran into in 2016. As the Democrats and their entire platform is all about lying to you, the American voters. As they will go through and they will promise that they are against the left. The left being the rich elite. See, that's when they lie to you. But the reality for the Democrats is they are built of the rich illiberal elite. The Democrats are the party of the billionaires. And so when they lie to you, the American people, and say they're against the billionaires, it just doesn't fly. And so they're okay with pretending and lying about it, but they're not okay with actually implementing these policies. And that's what they did to Bernie Sanders in 2016, because they realized when he was serious about going after, now they're labeled as the oligarchy, but these rich billionaires, they replaced him with Hillary Clinton, because the left, as they always do, lie that they're not against billionaires. And with that, I'm way over. We're up against the clock. The rest of these stories have to go back in the stack for another day. We'll be back again on Monday. I hope you have a great weekend. This is the CASHLOREN Show, and God bless the USA. Well, independent thinkers, we have come to the top of another hour. The rest of the stories have to go back in the stack. If you enjoyed this content, take a moment, hit the subscribe, turn on notifications. Most importantly, share a conservative message with your friends and family. We will be back Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on the CASHLOREN Show. We will go and we will expose and fight the fake news networks who have been getting away with lying to you for decades. Our content will always be free, but if you'd like to support more, you can do so monetarily over at Locals at the Cash Loren Show. And there's great rewards and benefits for doing so. For only about a cup of coffee a month, you will receive exclusive articles and you'll have your name at the end of the video, just like these other fine patriots have. If that sounds interesting to you, go over to Locals right now for just a cup of coffee a month and help independent creators stay free, keep the lights on, and continue to expose the fake news networks. We'll see you again on the next episode. This is the Cash Loren Show.